Welcome back. I'm Hugh Hewitt. You can hear me Monday through Friday on the Salem Radio Network, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. But on Saturday mornings, I'm right here on MSNBC, joined either by a newsmaker or a panel of the very best young journalists inside the Beltway. This morning, Tim Alberta, Fran Chambers, Josh Kraushaar, Courtney Kube. They're all here now. Who is the most important person this week not named Trump? Josh Kraushaar of National Journal.
I would say Nikki Haley, the UN ambassador, for two reasons. We're dealing with North Korea and Iran, two hotspots where diplomacy will be really important, and an outspoken, articulate voice in favor of U.S. national interests is going to be crucial. Tillerson, for his strengths and weaknesses, is not that articulate voice. Nikki Haley is, and she's going to, if we decide to push the envelope a little bit with Iran, she's going to be a leading spokesperson for this administration. I also think her political ambitions are very clear. Her interest in becoming...
Does Tillerson like her?
No.
Okay. Courtney, you just said no.
No, I mean, there's a well-publicized rivalry. Tillerson can't stand her, and she could be the next Secretary of State, and I think there's a lot of footsteps being heard.
I try and listen closely, but that's news to me. Courtney Kube, what is who's the most important person not named Trump?
So Kim Jong-un is my pick, and it's not because he did anything this week, but because he didn't. October 10th was a big anniversary in North Korea, and there was a lot of speculation. Last week, we heard publicly from the deputy director of the Korea Mission Center at the CIA to expect them to do something, to test potentially another ICBM or something, and they did nothing. And I think we underestimate how he is able to drive the U.S. reaction by things he does and does not do. So this week, it wasn't that he tested something, but that he didn't.
A thing we did not hear, the dog that did not bark. Tim Alberta.
Following on two good geopolitical answers, I would look at the policy front, and if this president hopes to achieve anything of significance, on the, legislatively speaking, in this first calendar year of his administration, it's going to be on Mitch McConnell. And as we saw talking about health care earlier, the House ultimately, despite all of the divisions within the House Republican Conference, was able to pass a bill. Ultimately, Paul Ryan can lose 23 votes. Mitch McConnell can lose 3. Mitch McConnell is going to have a heck of a time passing tax reform, and if they don't pass tax reform, you have to wonder not only how the Republican Party turns over the calendar into 2018, looking at what could be a very difficult midterm election, you also have to wonder how long Mitch McConnell can remain the Senate Majority Leader.
Fran?
Going back to health care again, despite the problems I said that there were with this executive order, I'm going to say Rand Paul, because it was a big win for him this week that the president signed that executive order on health care. That was something that he's been pushing for a very long time, and it was a big reason why he didn't want to vote for the legislation that had been in front of the Senate. So big week for Rand Paul. The president had described some of the people who were holdouts as grandstanders, but it may have turned out that grandstanding got him what he wanted.
Yeah, Rand Paul saved Obamacare, but he also got some headlines. My person who is not named Trump is John Kelly, not just because of his press conference, but because he's the epitome of public service. I can't tell you how much I admire this general and this man and the way that he presented himself in the White House. Let's go to what you're working on. Tim Alberta, you got a huge story that's coming. I'll be watching Politico magazine this week. What are you working on?
Hugh, I am almost sworn to silence, but I can just tell your viewers that it's going to relate to John Boehner and his 25 years in Washington, and they should keep an eye out for it in the next couple of weeks.
That is a great tease. Fran, what are you working on?
Well, I am heading very soon to Asia with the president. So speaking of Kim Jong-un, I'll be heading to Tokyo and also China and the Philippines. So looking ahead to that, and what does that trip mean for this president? What does it mean for the United States? And what posture does President Trump take after he comes back from that trip? Korea.
Josh Kraushaar, what are you working on at National Journal?
I've been talking to a lot of Democratic strategists who have been in the field conducting polls in all these battleground races. They found some pretty surprising stuff. Donald Trump is more popular than they thought. Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell a lot less popular than they thought. They're going to be doing an advertising blitz for the midterms.
House in play?
House is in play, very much in danger for Republicans.
Do you really believe the House is in play?
I do. I mean, it's not a guarantee by any stretch, but there are enough seats, there are enough incumbents that are getting dragged down. But it's not because of Trump. It's because the Republican Party is split, and there are a lot of Republican voters who aren't going to show up for the midterms.
Let me do my John McLaughlin. Tim Alberta, yes or no? House in play?
It's a lack of results. I actually think that the Senate might be more in play than the House, believe it or not. As friendly as the map is, as Josh said earlier, but it's a lack of results.
Courtney, what are you working on for NBC?
I am all nukes, spooks, and war lately, yes. We're watching...
It's a book?
Yes, nukes, spooks, and war. I'm watching closely the situation in northern Iraq right now, where there looks like there's the possibility for a clash between between the central government and the Kurds, as they both are moving towards Kirkuk. More of the Iraqis are moving up towards Kirkuk. I'm watching the situation in Syria as the Turks are moving more and more troops into there, and then the situation back and forth between the U.S. and Turkey as diplomatic relations between those two countries are at...
Would you explain to people how frayed that has become?
It's remarkable. It all really started last summer, more than a year ago, with the failed coup in Turkey. And Erdogan really felt that the U.S.
President of Turkey.
President Erdogan really felt that the U.S. didn't respond with enough support for him and his government. And he felt very burned by that. And his reaction has spanned more than a year now. So there have been a series of diplomatic back and forth this week, with now both sides saying they're not going to issue new visas.
We have this man, Mr. Gulen, in the United States. We have a minute, Courtney. Will the United States ever extradite him to Turkey?
I don't think you can ever rule it out, but I can't envision a scenario where the U.S. would do it right now.
It won't get better because Erdogan believes he is the source of all the unrest in his country, right or wrong. But we have an extradition treaty, but we have no evidence that he's been conspiring.
Exactly. And so two of the biggest things that I'm watching right now are there's an enormous U.S. military presence in Turkey, primarily at Incirlik, and it's a key military hub, and it's a Turkish base. So if the relations continue to fray, what does that mean for that military base? And then, of course, Turkey's a NATO member. So as Turkey continues to move more and more into Syria, is there some point, at what point is it that the U.S. has to back them? Is there any point?
It's a remarkably complex story. I wouldn't want to have to report it because there's so much backstory you have to put into every front part of every explanation. Well done. Hey, we'll be right back.